When regulators look at crypto, they see two things: a radically transparent ledger and a maze of intermediaries moving value at high speed. In this module, we'll map those assets, actors, and pipes so you can see exactly where real compliance leverage lives and where your controls actually make a difference. In traditional finance, ownership is tied to named accounts in private bank databases. In crypto, it's tied to private keys on public blockchains. That shift means regulators lose direct labels like salary, fraud, or investment, but gain a permanent shared transaction trail. For compliance, the game changes. Instead of reading cleanly labeled bank statements, we infer economic reality from pseudonymous on-chain data, combined with off-chain KYC records and analytics. To understand crypto compliance, you first need this basic unit. The private key is the secret proof of control. Anyone holding it can move the assets. From that key, a public address is generated, like an account number others can see. A wallet is simply whatever stores keys and signs transactions. At every step, compliance comes back to a single question: who ultimately controls those private keys? Blockchains reveal a lot, but not everything. You can usually see when a transaction happened, which addresses sent and received it, what asset moved, and the exact amount and fee paid. What you don't see directly are real-world identities, the purpose of the payment, or the legal agreements behind it. That's why we call crypto pseudonymous. Once an address is linked to a person or entity, their entire visible history on that chain becomes open to analysis. When value moves on-chain, every transfer is written to the public ledger. Anyone with a block explorer can see that movement forever. Off-chain, it works differently. Exchanges like NovaX maintain an internal ledger, shifting balances between users without touching the blockchain each time. For compliance, the real power is in connecting these worlds. Regulators and VASPs use off-chain records, KYC data, IP addresses, device fingerprints, to tie visible blockchain activity back to real people and organizations. When you hear blockchain analytics, think pattern spotting, not magic surveillance. First, software groups addresses that probably belong to the same owner. Then it labels those clusters: a regulated exchange, a darknet market, a mixer, a DeFi protocol, and so on. From there, it generates risk scores that feed into transaction monitoring, sanction screening, and investigative workflows. You can think of crypto as a three-layer stack. At the bottom, infrastructure like blockchains and smart contracts just executes code. Regulators mostly leave that rail alone. Real compliance lives above it, in the middle and top layers, where exchanges, wallets, custodians, and processors interact with customers. You can actually apply KYC, monitoring, travel rule messaging, and sanction screening. That's the practical perimeter you design your AML program around. The key idea here is custody and intermediation. When a centralized exchange or broker holds the keys and executes trades for customers, it clearly falls into FATF's VASP definition and attracts full AML and travel rule expectations. With self-hosted wallets and pure DeFi, the user or a smart contract controls the assets, so there's usually no regulated intermediary in the middle, although rules here are evolving and may capture some gateway or interface services. Onboarding is your first real line of defense, not a box-ticking exercise. Done well, identity verification gives you a reliable legal person behind every account, not just a photo and a name. Next comes risk profiling. You're deciding who can do what and how closely to watch them, based on products, geography, behavior, and history. The big idea is that onboarding data becomes the permanent bridge between messy real-world humans and clean on-chain addresses. If that bridge is weak, everything downstream is fragile. Now think about what happens once a customer is live. Every flow runs a continuous gauntlet. First, deposits are checked. Where did this crypto come from? And is the source sanctioned, hacked, or otherwise high risk? Then, ongoing transaction monitoring looks for patterns over time: layering, structuring, mule behavior, emerging scams. Finally, withdrawals form the last gate, screening destination wallets for sanctions exposure, darknet services or mixers, and deciding whether to allow, pause, or block funds leaving your platform. Every covered crypto transfer effectively runs on two parallel rails. On the public blockchain, only value moves: wallet addresses and amounts. In parallel, Through a private travel rule network, originator and beneficiary details move between VASPs. Messaging protocols and APIs link these rails so each VASP can tie an on-chain transaction to off-chain identity data. When this works well, regulators gain the transparency they expect without exposing personal data directly on-chain. Even the best-run VASP will always face residual risk at the edges of the system. You can't fully control what happens in self-custody wallets, DeFi protocols, or with privacy tools like mixers and peer-to-peer trading. Your responsibility is to understand those edges, not pretend they don't exist. Map where funds come from and where they go. Tune controls for those touchpoints, document your rationale, and be ready to explain it through SARs, law enforcement responses, and board reporting. Everything you've learned fits into 3 timeless objectives. First, identify the parties. Who is behind this wallet, this device, this transaction? Second, understand their activity. What patterns, behaviors, and counterparties are you really seeing on-chain and off-chain? Third, control the risk. Set limits, block the worst cases, and escalate the gray ones. Crypto only changes the tools and data sources. The core compliance mission and your accountability doesn't change.